Hi everyone, it's Connie, and today we're going to talk about an 8th grade project I designed, studying social movements with social media. First off, why study social movements or protests with 8th graders? Well, according to Piaget, 8th graders are in the formal operational stage of development, so they should understand that others might experience the world differently than they do. Having students study the impact of human and civil rights gives them one framework for understanding the experiences of people who may not be like them, and it helps them grow in empathy for others. Now, there are a lot of ways to study human and civil rights, so why use social media? Well, according to Baird and Fisher, social media engages the user in constructivist and social learning. That is, by communicating or reading others' communications on social media, students are able to build knowledge from the collective research and experiences of a vast online network. And students are already doing this for non-academic purposes. Researchers such as Pelling and White have emphasized the popularity of social media for years, so why not focus students' energy on learning how to use social media to improve the lives, well-being, and circumstances of others? So how would students learn to use technology to improve lives or become digital leaders? Well, I think they have to learn two things. One, how to influence change, which they can learn by researching and evaluating sources about how individuals and groups have influenced change in North Carolina and the United States. And two, how to use appropriate technology tools, which they can learn by practicing with tools for accessing and organizing information and designing products, as well as observing how others use these tools. My project has 3 stages, each with multiple activities for accomplishing the objectives on the previous slide. In the first stage, students will research and curate traditional media sources, posting the results on Padlet. In the second stage, students will research and curate social media sources, primarily using Twitter. And in the third stage, students will give each other feedback on their curations and revise and synthesize their learning. The first stage begins with students selecting one of the protests and reading the overview article linked in the first column. These links could be shared in Google Drive or posted on Google Classroom for students. After reading the overview, students select an event, or in the case of Occupy Wall Street, a topic, and then an associated event, and find and read an article from a reliable source like the event organizer's website, a newspaper, a government agency, or a university. Students then post their articles in the linked Padlet, along with the date of the event and a one-sentence summary about the event. After everyone in a group has posted their article, the group will work to put them in chronological order. Each step in the first stage is aligned to one or more of the North Carolina Essential Standards, listed on the last yellow slide. Steps 3 and 4 involve the use of Padlet, which in this stage I selected because of its simple and intuitive interface, which allows for easy posting and rearranging as shown in this GIF, and which updates almost immediately, allowing for virtually synchronous interaction. These features show that Padlet can be leveraged to create a participatory culture as defined by Chow. However, as we've discussed numerous times in MSTU 4141, just because the technology can create a participatory culture doesn't mean it will. Clegg points out that collaboration needs to be nurtured, and Cretchen says the key to doing this is social interaction. Therefore, I would suggest that before starting this social movements project, the teacher conduct an intro lesson on Padlet where they model and then the students post on a social topic, comment on the posts of 1 to 3 students who share an interest with them, and reply to their comments. In this way, students can receive the affiliation, support, and affirmation that Cretchen says they need. The second stage begins with students dividing the protest events between them, reading the articles for each protest, and posting all the hashtags associated with that event to Padlet. Then students search on Twitter for the hashtag, and then the hashtag during the date range immediately surrounding their event. Like the first stage, each step in the second stage is aligned to one or more of the North Carolina Essential Standards. Steps 7 and 8 involve the use of Twitter, which in these steps I selected because of its ability, like Welleman says of Instagram, to support everyday photojournalism and provide on-the-ground access to protest happenings. Also, like Instagramming, tweeting with a hashtag or directed comment can enable a protest to maintain a dialogue with its audience, the world at large, in real time. In Step 9, students must curate tweets demonstrating agreement, opposition, and any other viewpoint expressed. Harris, a writer for the ISTE blog, says curation skills are imperative to develop because they help students add to the conversation with original thought, and determine how various resources connect. Because these are skills at high levels of Bloom's taxonomy, students will need support in developing them. In the case of this project, I would suggest modeling how to create moments or new Padlets by clicking on your icon in the top right of Twitter or Padlet. Then I would pick a hashtag from one of the movements and conduct a search on it with no date range, so as not to conflict with the other students' searches. And I would think aloud about why I wanted to or didn't want to keep the first 5 to 10 tweets in my curated list. Were they original posts, or were they just posts with the hashtags? Had I seen their media in other posts before? If I selected a tweet, I would click on the top right button of the tweet and add it to the appropriate moment. After adding these tweets to one of the moments, I would go back to where I created the moment and think aloud about what story I might want to tell with my tweets. What viewpoints need to be grouped together? What groups of people need to be put together to show solidarity or pushed apart to show contrast? Then I would model how to move posts around, make the moment link only, and publish the moment. Both Padlet and Twitter can help students organize materials for curation, but depending on school district, students may or may not be allowed to use Twitter accounts. If students are not allowed to use Twitter accounts or don't have them, they should post each of their tweets in a new Padlet, organizing the tweets into columns pro, anti, and other or unrelated. If students are allowed to use Twitter accounts and have them, they should create Twitter moments for each of the viewpoints and then add their curated tweets to the respective moments. After creating their curated sets, students should link them back to the respective posts on the original Padlet. Now, the biggest advantage of creating Twitter moments instead of Padlet posts is that tweets show fully in moments but only as thumbnails in Padlet, making evaluation of the set difficult. In the last stage, group members will evaluate each other's curations and provide feedback about how tweets were categorized, how tweets fit into the narrative of beliefs or evidence for their category, and whether the narrative was appropriately linked to resulting actions. Students will revise their curations based on their classmates' feedback, and the group will reflect on their learning by summarizing the objectives, methods, and events that comprise the protest, by comparing the level of unification, information, and effectiveness the sides of the protest had, and by explaining what criteria would have led them to join one side of the protest, if any. The last stage, involving the culminating activities, hits the most North Carolina essential standards of the 3 stages. There are a number of features of this project that should be evaluated critically against theory. First, according to McLaughlin and Lee, the research topic of 2010's protests and the use of the current social media tool, Twitter, are important because real-world or authentic contexts make learning meaningful and purposeful. Second, according to Baird and Fisher, the ability to choose one's research topic, the interactivity of research materials, and the interactive social media and self-publishing features of Padlet and Twitter were in line with the values of the net-centric generation. Third, according to Baird and Fisher, the combination of individual and group activities was in agreement with their course design recommendations for neo-millennial students. The design of the group activities, in particular, were in keeping with the work of not only Baird and Fisher, but also McLaughlin and Lee, and with Chow. The joint organization of the Padlet and response to the closing questions provided opportunities for Baird and Fisher's constructivist-based learning, as well as McLaughlin and Lee's collaborative content generation. The tweet curation feedback and revision allowed for constructivist-based learning as well, but according to Chow, it also allowed members to build connections with their groups. The primary weakness of this project is its lack of outreach. According to Brown and Adler, students need to learn to be full participants in the field they are studying, and they need to plug into the international community's discourse. In this project, however, students do not directly engage with the protesters they read about, and there is not an explicit push for students to share their learning outside of their group. These issues could be addressed by organizing a class interview with a protester and partnering with another class in school or through social media to share student work. Another issue raised by McLaughlin and Lee is of embedding learning in authentic tasks. This could be addressed by having students learn about an ongoing protest and having them organize an event supporting or opposing it.